traders, Sam Shakespeare coming to you live. How's everyone doing today? Got my coffee, so I'm good to go. Made some big changes over the weekend to the monster, and we'll go over those shortly. Hey Jeffrey, what's happening? Now, I don't see a ton to do right now, so I might as well just go over this new monster. Let me show you what we got for the new monster trend bot here. There's a couple little changes. I'll tell you what I've done that I can think of right off the bat. The first thing is, and Steven, you pointed this out to me in an email, that the end time wasn't actually the end time. The end time was telling you the end hour, whatever hour you put in here was the end hour, but it actually let it trade through that hour. So I've changed it now. So now the end time is truly the end time, guys. So if it says 19, that means at 19 GMT, at 19:00 GMT, you will no longer trade. So now the end times are the actual end times, and that's true for all the individual trade setups as well. I realized all the individual trade setups and the global end times and the Friday end times actually included that last hour you entered, so it would trade through that hour. So I didn't want to confuse anyone. It was obviously confusing. Stephen pointed it out, and rightfully so. So I've gone ahead and changed that. So now the end time is truly the actual end time for the bots, for the alerts, etc. I have changed so where you can now take manual trades even if the end time is up, and also even if you hit your levels. So you can still take manual trades now. Nothing changed here. Okay, notice here there's a monster trend master switch. Okay, and then here's the bot switch for it. So see, I have the 5 bot true here, but the 5-minute trend is false here, so this doesn't matter. The master is the master. Just know that. If your master is false, the bot switch ain't going to work either. Now, just as a reminder, the only thing here, the breakout bot, the bot switch is the master switch. There's no master for breakout, so just make sure if you want it on, you've got it set true to here. Here's the monster trend trade setup. Man, it's a big setup. It's the biggest category there is right now, guys. I don't want it to be confusing. Everything is mostly the same, but there's a couple cool things that I think I've done here. You can actually do white zone entries, so you can just scale in at the white zones if you want. So there's a lot more options on this one. Your enable scale in, 5-minute scale in, and your 15. I almost put it on this time, but there's actually going to be a 60-minute scale in. Okay, for those people that really want to go light on the risk, and you want to take advantage of big trends, you can go to 60-minute scale-ins and actually control the 240 and daily requirements, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. So I don't want to jump around too much, but I might have to just because of the way I got it laid out. Pretty much the same. Okay, so your initial entry, obviously you can do any of these entry types. You've got your risk factor like normal, stop and target like normal. I'm on a 20 pip target right now, just for the heck of it. Now the stops, I've added a lot of stops. Alright, this is a 60-minute box. This is what we've been using, but if you click it, you'll notice if, say, you want to use a 60-minute scale in, which I don't have on here yet, but it'll be on there soon, then you can actually use big stops if you want. So here's a 60-minute box. So here's an L2. Here's a 60-minute white zone, 60-minute L7 if you want. None of this is tested yet. Okay, and you can even have big swing stops. So if you want to get in on a monster and have it exit at a 15-minute swing stop, in other words, the 15-minute chart breaks against its swing high or low, then you can do that. So a lot of options on the stops, guys. You can even do smaller stops. If you just want to do, say, a 1 and 5 minute entry, you can use a 15-minute stop. Everything here is the same as the monster's been. The scale in, true, risk factor. Now you do have a new entry mode. You can do actually white zone on your scale ins now. That's different than before. Now the scale ins can only have the one click in dynamic. You can't have stochastics yet on the scale ins. Maybe that's coming in the future, but right now, no. Biggest thing here is you can do white zone entries, which is something I've wanted to do. And you don't have to do white zone on everyone. You can do, a box on the first one and a white zone on the 5-minute. Maybe you want your scale ins to be a little more stretched out. This is all the same as before. Now this is the part that gets a little, I think, fun. Okay, you got your clear lanes, 2 of 20, near pips all the same, defense pips all the same. This is the part that gets Kind of cool, I think. You can actually design your trends now. So here's what it looks like in your advanced settings. So you can design what your 1 minute chart should look like, your 5, your 15, your 60, all the way up to your 4-hour. When we first started the monster, this was the setup basically. White zone expansions on 1, 5, and 15. All right. I recently put that require 60-minute box cross. That's this setting basically. So that would be the L1, L2 cross on the 60-minute. Now I want to show you about these settings. These are the requirements for each chart. So this is what the 1 minute chart needs to look like. If I chose a white zone expansion, first of all these build on each other. Whatever selection I choose, it includes everything above it. All right. So at the very minimum, you want your box to be pointing in the direction of your trade. All right. These are obviously different currencies. It doesn't matter. I'm just trying to show you how some things can look here. Now, 1 minute requirement. Forget about the time frames. Forget about all that stuff right now. I just want to show you what charts can look like. Okay. So if we choose a white zone expansion, okay, that's the most restrictive way a chart can look for a trend. It means everything needs to look really good. All right, then that means, first of all, obviously the white zone needs to be expanded. The L1 needs to be below the L7 and pointing down. All right, that's the white zone expansion if you want the chart to look like that. If you just do the L1, L7 cross, then the L1 and the price need to be below the L7. The L1 needs to be pointing down. The L2 needs to be pointing down. The truth is the L2 also needs to be below the L3. So that's, you're just you're building parts of the algorithm. Okay, so if you just want an L1, L2 in the direction of trade, then this is it, an L1, L2 cross. Then say you're going short, then it really just needs to look like this. See, L1 needs to be below the L2. It can be, the white zones don't matter, it doesn't matter, anything else, it's just the L1s have crossed in your direction for the 1 minute. And this might be good if you've got expansions on all the big ones and all you care about is an L1, 2 cross on the 1 minute, you'll get in. You can try that. And then you have L1 in direction of trade, which means maybe this one, maybe the L1 is turned down. This actually looks flat, but it doesn't even need a cross. If you're going to go short, all it needs is that to be the last 3 values to be lower than each other. The way the monsters have been set up is this. Well, they started out like this. Okay, the first iteration of the monsters were 3 expanding white zones on the 1, 5, and 15, and we didn't care about the 60 or the 240. Say you want the most minimum requirement of the 60-minute. You want all this, but then you want the L1 in direction of trade, which that means to get the 60-minute, say this is a short trade. So to get the L1 pointing down is for the price to start trending under it. So if you do this, it at least means you'll be under the 60-minute box. It won't get in your way. If you disable it, the 60-minute box could be anywhere. All right, so that's that. If you want the L1, L2 cross, then obviously it'll be behind you, and now it's a little bit more of a requirement. You'll need to see the cross. I mean, I could get into these a little bit more. You could technically do all white zone expansions. Now, if you do this, you're going to get less entries, but I believe you're going to get very strong entries. However, just know if you have an expanding white zone on the 240, that means you have a trending 240-minute chart, which means any reversal could be large. So if it pulls back on you, it could be large. You can use that and still use your stops as normal. You could do all this and still only scale in at the 1 and the 5 and use the 15 stop, but make sure all this is required before you get trades. Let me know if you have any questions about that. Also, there's not just a maximum white zone entry on the 1 minute, but there's also a maximum on the 5 and 15 minute. I put them really high so they won't affect anything right now. So you can actually prevent a monster from entering if the 1, 5, or 15 minute white zone is too high. By the way, I added last time, it just means if you're after hours or if anything causes the VTA to stop doing alerts, whether it's after hours, trading hours, whether it's during a news release, whether you've hit your levels, any of those things. I think there's a couple other things too. If you have too many trades open, there's a few things that can turn it off. The spread could be too high if the spread's too high. So any of those things that could turn off the VTA will also turn off your scale-ins if you have this set to true. False is the way it's come originally, so I haven't changed it. I've left it at false. But if you don't want this thing to scale in at any strange times, just set that to true. All right, so that in a nutshell, is the new monster. So, okay, I'm going to have them come like this. I think I'm going to have it come like this, which just means we're going to require a cross on the 60-minute, and we're going to at least need to be above the 240-minute box, basically. L1 in direction of trade just means, or below. You're going to be, the 240, you're just going to try to make sure that 240 is behind you. Any questions? Okay, good question. Okay, so white zone phase is listed here, and what that is in a nutshell, it's the number of expansions. Okay, but that's not exactly what a white zone phase is. Basically, a phase is based on the Fibonacci distances between Fibonacci moving averages. When these get really spread out, then the white zone phase gets large and large and large. That means the momentum is building and it's stretching out. This is good and a healthy sign for a trend, but even trends can get a little too stretched out that it seems like it's got to pull back at some point. Usually 1 minute white zones don't get past 3 or 4. So 5 and 15, yeah, easily, no problem. But a 1 minute very rarely will get past 3 or 4. So you don't want to enter a trend or something at the 1 minute box if you have a white zone phase of 4. Even 3 gets a little dicey sometimes. Because first of all, what it means is the market's so stretched out that if, say, for you're using an L7 as a stop, then that means the more these expand, the further away your stop is. It's really gets far away. If you want to be more conservative, I wouldn't blame anyone by making this for the 1 minute a 2. Like you'll enter if the white zone phase is a 2, but once it starts getting to be a 3, maybe not take those. They'll still work very often. If you keep this at 2, I think your stops will be a lot better and easier to manage. You'll get less entries too if you put a more restrictive requirement. So the maximum is only 2. It's going to cut out all the entries where there was a 1 minute white zone phase of 3, and that's a lot. And they still do work well, but just know when they fail, your stops are a little bigger when the white zone phase is 3 on the 1 minute. So I wouldn't blame anyone for putting a 2. Just right now, everything's been tested at the 3 level, so I keep it there. But you'll see once you start understanding that 3's starting to get a little stretched out. I would probably hold off unless the momentum looks perfect. I would probably hold off manually sometimes on a white zone phase of 3, but not always. All right. Now the 5 minute, I think once you get to about 8, between 5 and 8, it's tough on the 5 minute. I've seen 5 minutes go pretty far. We're not really in a trending market now, so it will be hard to see right now what the white zone phases are. It's a Monday. The markets have kind of not really been moving all that much. I think cable has been moving the most, if anything. It's a good measure of volatility, and you can almost see that when the collapses start. Here's an hour. It's a good sign that we're going to reverse. So as long as it's expanding, you can short off that green line after a lower low, no problem. And then as soon as, now this is kind of the hourglass. See, it didn't, boom. Usually the top line or the farther away part of the white zone is the one that's going to come down to make the point. This one didn't. It's ever so slightly is curling up in that hourglass right there. It's very hard to see. And it's not always a confirmation. The hourglass is not a confirmation that it's going to collapse. But it's a time to start being a little cautious. It's like if you have a green light, this is the yellow light, and then you got the red light. When it starts hourglassing, that's like your yellow light. It's like, yeah, do we really want to do this? Make sure you make a lower low before trying again if you've got an hourglass shape. If you got the nice triangular shape, then you can get in right at the box. Okay, any questions about the new monster setup?